with his short hair. He wrote, All for the bloody hell. All for the Empire by Roger Trahan and Mark Child. History of Swindon Theatre. Into putting on third class and even worse plays, simply because of a technicality. Yet, if he gave up, he said, it would hurt his family and himself. It would be a serious blow for the town. Employment would suffer, and so would other areas, for 75% of the money taken at the doors is actually re-spent in the town. It was a calculated, if heartfelt plea. Manners knew that the people of Swindon, who regarded him well for himself and for the years of charity work he had undertaken, would be firmly on his side. They would think that the law was being stupidly applied by officials who were quite out of touch with what was expected by theatre audiences in 1924. Hello, viewers. Perhaps because of Manners' letter, the long arm of the law was not about to give up. On Easter Monday 1924, it materialized at the Empire Theatre in the shape of the Deputy Chief Constable, Superintendent Brooks, and a police constable who kept observation. Between 10:30 p.m. and 10:45 p.m., while the performance was still in progress, they saw two men enter the theatre and others leave. From this they deduced that illegal drinking might be taking place. So 13 minutes later they entered the theatre and made their way to the bar. There, doubtless to their great delight, they observed 5 persons around a table on which were beer bottles and glasses, one of which was half full of liquor, while the other was wet with froth. 2 men were standing at the bar, one of whom had a glass in front of him containing whiskey, and the other had a glass with him that seemed to contain beer. Manners was summoned to appear in court on 12th of June 1924, charged with supplying intoxicating liquor after permitted hours. He was not in court because he had just undergone an operation as a result of his recent accident. But after a long hearing, the bench convicted in his absence and fined him £30 plus 5 guineas in costs. The arm of the law had flexed its muscles. Hello viewers, please submit if you like it, the history of Swindon Theatre. After all these problems and a lot more soul searching, Alfred Manners dropped his plans to sell the Empire, but also axed his previously stated intention to build a new theatre adjacent. This is about Swindon Theatre. From the moment, however, he would not leave, and would press on with his remodelling of the Empire. Even so, it is likely that Manners had at this point decided to give up the Empire in the not too distant future. Others continue to express an interest in taking it over. He was still suffering from the effects of the accident of 3 years earlier when he slipped and fractured his thigh while alighting from his car. The injury troubled him considerably, and he intended to go into hospital for another operation to relieve the pain. He had no faith in the licensing authorities, and he felt that the police were watching his every move. He must also have felt that he could press ahead with his plans for upgrading the theatre to ultimately greater financial advantage, and that an improved venue would attract more potential buyers and allow him to take a premium on what he had for sale. The last week before closure was a huge success. The program, entitled The Musical Romance, featured the world's largest stage organ. It had 5 keyboards, 75 stops, 2,303 pipes, and weighed nearly 5 tons. The organist, F. Rowland Timms, played excerpts from The Mikado, but the big success was the spirited rendition of a composition of his own, which musically evoked a storm complete with thunder and lightning. At the end of both performances on the Saturday night, Mr. Rowland Timms read a letter from Manners, thanking the audience for their support and describing the plans for the big refurbishment over the summer break. He apologized for not being able to attend, but he had never properly recovered from his accident, was constantly in pain, and was expecting to go into hospital for another operation quite soon. On the following day, Sunday the 27th of April 1924, two crowded concerts were given at the Empire by the Musical Romance Company with Mr. Rowland Timms on the organ, given in aid of the Victoria Hospital. Then the theatre closed down for 3 months. In July 1924, the Swindon Evening Advertiser reported a great push in process at the Empire Theatre. It spoke of drastic alterations and more or less repeated the description that Manners had given for the work at the end of the previous year. Hello viewers, all for the Empire by Roger Traherne, The History of the Swindon Theatre. A reporter who had just been taken inside noted there was still a great deal of scaffolding about. Decorators were busy on the ceiling. Others were completing the decorative devices of the front of the circle, and labourers were busy mixing cement on the floor beneath. It seemed unlikely that it would all be finished by August Bank Holiday, but Manners was buoyant and had a new slogan for the theatre: no early doors and every seat bookable. Please sub me viewers, I'm doing my Asperger live stream. Swindon Theatre, most comfortable in the West, reported the North Wiltshire Herald on 8th of August 1924, adding that the place was expected to open towards the end of the following week. They repeated the general description, but were then in a position to add further information. A 4-tier chandelier with 60 electric lights had been hung from the dome of the theatre, where there were also a huge electric fan with another one on each side of the building near the roof. The floors of the grand circle, orchestra stalls and stalls were carpeted in grey. The circle floor was covered in cork linoleum. The seats throughout were upholstered in velvet, had recoil springs so that they rose automatically when not in use, and mahogany armrests. In order to solve the problem of drafts, corners had been rounded, and an ingenious system of boarding was employed to minimize drafts from the stage. The theatre box office telephone number was Swindon 96. The strain of carrying out the rebuilding had adversely affected Manners' health. He also felt severely let down by the authorities, who appeared to be more intent on discovering breaches of the law at the theatre than understanding what he was trying to do for the people of Swindon. He generally wanted to give the town's theatre-goers top-quality entertainment and a venue commensurate with his high standards. It's a hard word. Many family and business discussions took place behind the scenes while the Empire was being remodelled. Following its remodelling, the Empire reopened on 16th of August 1924. The ceremony was carried out by the Mayor of Swindon, Alderman Thomas Charles Newman, and was attended by civic dignitaries and prominent townspeople. There followed 2 performances of Hey Presto, a revue featuring Clive Maskelyne, Frederick Culpit, Stephanie Stevens, and Tom Heathfield. Private boxes for 4 persons cost 15 shillings. It was 2 shillings 4d to sit in the grand circle or the orchestra stalls. The ordinary stalls cost 1-3, and a seat in the circle was 6pence, or 8d if booked in advance. On 24 October 1924, one of the Empire's bar attendants, Sidney James Maidman of 2 Rolleston Street, collapsed and died at his place of work. The body was found by Reg Manners, son of the manager, who noticed that the electric lights had not been switched on in the bar and went to investigate. Maidment, who was born in 1859, was at one time a member of the Swindon Fire Brigade when the fire engine was drawn by horses. He was later employed as a driver of steam rollers by Swindon Corporation, who had also been an evening bar attendant at the theatre since 1902. Hello viewers, please sub me if you like it. On 11th of August 1925, Alfred Manners announced that he had disposed of his interest in the Empire Theatre. The new owners were Jack Gladwin and Joe Collins, who would retain the existing staff, and the new team would take over at the end of the month. Manners retired to the Gables in County Road, Swindon, but was to suffer a devastating blow when on the 7th of March 1926 his son Alfie, en route to Rhodesia to take up tobacco growing, fell overboard from the ship Gaika and was drowned. He was 27 years old. Manners never came to terms with this, and it seems likely that the presence of the Empire Theatre, now in the hands of others, was also almost too much to bear. The family relocated to Corner Crest Friars Road, Christchurch, and it was there that Alfred Manners died, aged 57, on 10th of December 1926. He was survived by his widow, Ellen Eliza, his son Reggie, who was living in New Zealand, and 3 daughters, Dolly, Mrs. Kendall, Winifred, and Elsie. His mother was also alive. Probate was granted to his widow, and he left 29,562. Gladwin had managed the Empire Theatre at Swindon for its first 3 years under Ernest Carpenter. Since then, he and Collins had gone into theatre ownership. Hope you enjoyed All for the Empire by Roger Traherne. Please submit if you liked it. More to come. God bless, viewers.